Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have talked on this program about the problems of rigged elections. This is Zimbabwe's biggest problem. After 44 years of independence, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Zanu PF has blatantly rigged elections. Last year, the party rigged those elections. SADC and the AU confirmed the elections were flawed and illegal. But they could not go the extra step and deny Zanu PF political legitimacy because the opposition had participated, and more significantly, nearly 2 million Zimbabweans had voted for Chamisa alone. The issue is simple. If you Zimbabweans participate in the process, then you must believe in it. This issue of participating and then you turn around and say, oh, the process was rigged, is just a non-starter. Here is one guy who keeps pushing that narrative that the opposition can win rigged elections. It doesn't deny Zanu PF is rigging the elections. He acknowledges it, but his argument here is Nelson Chamisa in particular is so popular, he can clearly win. Over the weekend, there were by-elections. And this argument here is Chamisa did, or a Chamisa supported candidate did very well without Chamisa even being there. In other words, if Chamisa had been there, the opposition would have won. Let's just hear what he has got to say.
2024, and today I'm going to be giving you my opinions on the outcome of the by-elections that took place this weekend. And most of you might not be understanding why I'm focusing so much on these by-elections. So Nelson Chamisa has taken a strategy and he has been expressing his approach, which I've called a grassroots first strategy. You all know that I'm not agreeable to that strategy. I believe that an organization has to be built from the top, but Nelson Chamisa has adopted the grassroots first strategy. So I'm going to be unpacking it for you and what is happening, what are the pros and cons of Nelson Chamisa's strategy and what has happened this weekend. So I want to start with the results of Binga. So the results of Binga are out, and as expected, Nelson Chamisa's party, the Independent Party, which is currently not having a name, has lost that election too. They lost the one in Umzingwane, and they've lost the one in Binga. But there are marked differences in what has happened. And I want to take you through this whole thing and what I think. So the results for Binga are as follows. So you see that I've unpacked them for you into a graph. And Zanu PF has had about 200 votes in the 4 polling stations. And then Nelson Chamisa has consistently had about 100. So 78, 111, 68, and 145. And then we had the CCC party, which is the yellow party, with the 12, 2, 4, and 3. And then the NCA party of Maduku, that had sometimes 0. So that is the party in red. So that's 5, 1, 0, and 3. You can clearly see that the 2 dominant parties is Zanu PF and the Independent of Nelson Chamisa. And as I showed you the candidates on that day when the election took place, this is the candidate of the independent candidate for Nelson Chamisa. He was David Siampani Munenge. So why this is very interesting is that Nelson Chamisa has been working in this constituency for a very long time. This is the one constituency where Prince Dubeko Sibanda has been working on the grassroots first strategy. And I've had massive discussions with these guys over their strategy of starting at the grassroots. And Dubeko has proved himself correct. There is a lot of brand recognition. So people know who is Nelson Chamisa's candidate. You can clearly see here that the blue is big. The blue, without Chamisa going to that constituency, they know who is the candidate for Nelson Chamisa. They also don't want the Zanu PF candidate. The Zanu PF candidate has come in with food, with maize, and they brought in furs at the polling station. So there were people standing there guarding the polling station, and still people were brave enough in the rural areas to vote for Nelson Chamisa.
Well, we can continue on that one. It continued on the same point. The point here, Benjamin, is, are we not going down the same rabbit hole here?
Good day to everybody. Thank you for having me. It's the same road and the same route over and over again. I mean, you know, we must agree and we must stand firm if we agree. Zimbabwean elections are rigged. Period. It's not only me that is saying this. The SADC report said the same thing. The AU report said the same. All observer mission statements said the same thing. You cannot, you know, you cannot say because you are winning, it's okay. The results are, you are fine with them. And when you are, you know, when you are losing, the results are rigged. It's either the election is rigged totally, or it's you're fine by the results. You know, it's guys like Gambakwe that are not helping the cause. They are really not helping the cause with their Chamisa mentality, you know, Chamisa chete mentality. It is drawing us back. It is leading us into frustration at the end of the day. We've been through this. Forget, you can never win rigged elections. Period. This to say his popularity, yes, he is popular, but the fact still remains. You cannot win rigged elections. It's an election process that is done and dusted years in advance. Oh, I hope, you know, it's difficult to it's, you know, it's a bitter pill to swallow when somebody keeps on doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. It's very frustrating.
Well, I think it was in 2008 when Professor Jonathan Moyo said that if on the voters' roll, on the ballot, there was a donkey and Robert Mugabe, the people will vote for the donkey. There was a lot of truth in that. The point there is the people of Zimbabwe know that Zanu PF has failed, and they're desperate for change. Those are facts, political facts, political realities that many people accept. The question then is, why is it then that the people of Zimbabwe have failed to bring about any meaningful political change in the country for the last 44 years? And the simple answer to that is Zanu PF rigs the elections. Then the logical thing is, okay, let's agree on the rules to make sure that elections are free, fair, and credible. The rules are already there. Zanu PF has been violating those rules. And like you correctly pointed out, election observer teams have again and again repeated the need to implement democratic reforms so that elections are free, fair, and credible. What we have in the opposition, and this is what some people are failing to understand, ordinary Zimbabweans that is that we have got an opposition that although they committed themselves to implementing the democratic changes, as MDC party's original name implied, Movement for Democratic Change, they have failed to implement not even one token reform, even when they had the golden opportunity to do so. And to make matters worse, they've been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. But they continue to participate out of greed. They failed to implement even one reform during the GNU because Mugabe bribed them to forget about the reforms. And ever since the GNU, they've participated in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving Zanu PF legitimacy, but they also knew that Zanu PF is giving away a few gravitran seats to entice them to participate. The ordinary Zimbabwean's failure to see those points is at the heart of our problem. Our friend here, Gambakwe, is not coming up with anything new. What is the difference between this by-election and the elections last year? Nothing. He goes on to show that the level of intimidation by Zanu PF thugs, buying votes, and so forth, those are problems that we already knew existed, and they are persisting. Why he's glorifying that Chamisa growing popularity beggars belief. It's not the popularity that has lack of popularity that has resulted in the opposition failing to get into power. It is that Zanu PF rigs the election. That is the problem. And if we keep on participating, we are only giving or perpetuating the dictatorship and the people suffering. I totally agree with you, Ben, that it really is frustrating how one supposedly intellectuals like Gambakwe there, ignoring the main issue and trying to encourage people, to make them believe that Chamisa this time with his new strategy, although he doesn't agree with it, is working. And the Blue Party could win the elections. We're just going round and round in circles in this particular case. I think that is what I really find frustrating.
I agree with you. It's turning out to be very, very frustrating. And at the end of the day, we always then cry foul to say SADC, is not coming to our. How do you expect them to come to our aid when we are doing the same mistake over and over again? I want to highlight, how corrupt and incompetent our opposition is. ZEC had, a conference, or a meeting that they had scheduled a couple of weeks or days ago, and they were discussing about reforms and stuff like that. ZEC acknowledges that there is need for reforms, and to my surprise, the opposition, the only reform that they talked about is on the agenda of how they disperse, they share the money, the money for participation. They wanted that reformed such that you don't get the Chawangu saga all over again, where Nelson Chamisa ends up losing the funds that he's supposed to get for participation. And I'm looking at, like, really, is that the only reform that you could sit down for days and come up with? That is not any solution to our problem. How the money is disbursed is got nothing to do with the problem. The problem at hand is Zimbabwe has never had free, fair, and credible elections. And not only did the observer missions statements, say of the 2023 elections, but they said that of all the elections past, the EU in 2018, they gave 23 recommendations. Those are 23 reforms that need to be implemented. And from all that, the opposition just saw one: the fact that there is money at the end of the stick. That is what they spoke about. And this includes the people from Nelson Chamisa's camp. They were there. So you can see, seriously, we have a problem if we're not going to address the fundamental, issues. And we are just worried about who gets what at the end of the day, which just goes to validate the point to say they're in it for the money. And then you have guys like Gambakwe, that are not helping the cause, that are preaching to say, the popularity of Chamisa is so much, you will probably win. This is already a platform for us to be, duped again into participating in the next 2028 election. And the result will be the same. Do not think you will ever win. Chamisa will never win in any rigged election, no matter how popular he is.
Yeah, it is so disappointing that we keep going round and round in circles because we avoid talking of the real issues on the table. The real issue here, and there's been all along, is not so much who is more popular. Like I said, Professor Jonathan Moyo was right, that the people of Zimbabwe are so fed up with Zanu PF. If on the ballot paper there is Mnangagwa and the donkey, the people will vote for the donkey. Because they're so desperate to get rid of Zanu PF. So the donkey is even more popular than Zanu PF, than Mnangagwa. But what more of a human being? In 2008, we saw that was the nearest we ever got to free, fair, and credible elections. And the people of Zimbabwe voted Zanu PF out. But what happened next? Mnangagwa stopped the whole results being announced. He stepped in and made sure that ZEC did not announce the result that he didn't want, and forced the nation to go into the runoff, during which wanton violence was used. And we are back to where we were. SADC refused to accept those results and gave the opposition the opportunity to implement reforms. They failed to implement even one token reform. The central question here for the people of Zimbabwe is, how long are we going to pretend that we can have a meaningful political change without making sure we've got free, fair, and credible elections? How long are we going to continue to pretend that the opposition can win rigged elections? Because that is at the heart of it. SADC cannot interfere in our election process if we, Zimbabweans, believe we can win rigged elections. How many countries out there do you know have got a functioning government out of rigged elections? That is a really pathetic argument. Why are we having to accept that Zanu PF has got the carte blanche powers to rig the elections? Because that is at the heart of it. The opposition failed to implement even one token reform because they believed they could win rigged elections. And now they continue to participate in flawed elections because they still believe they can win rigged elections. This is the problem. If we continued playing our friend Gambakwe there, he was going to go on to explain that even these last weekend by-elections, there were already signs that Zanu PF was intimidating the electorate. But his main message was that Chamisa's popularity, he's so popular, it will overwhelm Zanu PF's all machinations, vote rigging machinations. We have got to stop believing this idiotic nonsense that the opposition can win rigged elections. We should get over it. Rules are there for a purpose. And in this particular case, SADC has come to the side of the ordinary people and said, no, the elections last year failed to meet the rules. They couldn't have made it any more clearer than that. But if we Zimbabweans continue to persist that we can still win rigged elections, and therefore then we want rigged elections because we can win them, it's not for SADC to force us. It's for us to understand that. It's really elementary. Are we willing now to finally accept that we must have free, fair, and credible elections as the basis for our electoral process? Or are we going to carry on with this idiotic belief that we can participate in, even if the election process is flawed and illegal, we can still win it? Because if we go down that route, we have got to also to accept the results. We cannot complain that Zanu PF rigged the elections afterwards, because we already know that they are rigging them even now. They've been rigging them all along. We failed to implement reforms because the opposition believed they can win rigged elections. Gambakwe is telling you that Chamisa is so popular, he can win rigged elections. Are you willing to accept it? That is the question that I would like to leave Zimbabweans, wherever you are, with. Because 2028 is around the corner. And with this kind of nonsensical argument that we hear from the likes of Gambakwe, we are going to have a repeat of 2023 elections, a repeat of 2018 elections, a repeat of 2013 elections, where people are conned into believing that we can win rigged elections, we can have good governance from a flawed electoral process. Because if we participate, we have endorsed the system. As one would say in Shona. You have a chance to make that decision now, to demand reforms so that we have got to clear the deck and have an electoral process in which we know this is the democratic will of the people of Zimbabwe. No one has the right to rig elections. That is at the heart of the electoral process. If you accept Zanu PF has got carte blanche powers to rig the elections because Chamisa told you that he can win rigged elections, then you are responsible for the consequences. Thank you very much.
In closing, I would say, believe it or not, SADC and all other observer missions, they came to our rescue. They denied Zanu PF political legitimacy. They deemed the elections null and void, only for the same opposition to take up seats the very next day. And they called, the term hard-earned seats, meaning that where they won, they earned it, and where they lost, it was rigged. I mean, nobody will settle for such a foolish narrative. It's either the process is flawed, like what the mission statement said. SADC, AU, EU, and all observer missions condemned the elections for what they truly stand for and what they were. And here we are now, preparing again for 2028 under the same conditions, under the same environment of all the past elections. Truly, if you believe that you would win this time around with everything being the same, you will be incredibly naive. That will be the last, the definition of foolishness and stupidity. Zanu PF has already started gearing up for the 2028 elections. Zanu PF is going to rig those elections, come hail, come sunshine. And Nelson Chamisa and company are going to participate. And the very next day, they will be crying foul. The elections are rigged. The elections are rigged. Didn't you know? Didn't you see that the conditions are still the same? Hell, believe this, there is not even a verified voters roll. There is no such a basic thing. And people believe that popularity will win the case against rigged elections. Again, I say, if you believe such a thing, you would be incredibly naive, and you're not helping Zimbabwe in any way whatsoever, just like what Gambakwe is doing. He is not helping Zimbabwe. He is actually pushing us way, way back. Thank you. I think your mic is off.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to give Gambakwe, Dr. Nevas Mumba, the final say in what the 2023 elections was all about.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the Electoral Commission and things which happen in many other countries, you know. But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, you know, there is a comparison, you know, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, they're coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election. And they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
In this particular case, these by-elections are going ahead when we have changed absolutely nothing on the ground. Not even one token reform has been implemented. All Gambakwe is saying here is that Chamisa is so popular, he can win rigged elections. We have been down this rabbit hole. And it is absolutely infuriating that as a nation, we keep making the same mistake over and over again. 44 years of rigged elections, and the last 24 of which was with the connivance of MDC CCC. And I must admit, with assistance of misleading intellectuals like our friend Gambakwe. He should know better. He should answer the question. And the question is very simple. Are you saying that Chamisa is going to win another rigged election? Because we have not implemented any reforms. We've done absolutely nothing. We are just participating again in the flawed elections that we've been told are flawed and illegal. Even SADC and the AU have confirmed that. So why are we keeping on participating in flawed elections? Other than the fact that you believe Chamisa can win rigged elections. So I ask you again, are you saying Chamisa will win rigged 2028 election? Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Benjamin. And have a good night to everybody.
Thank you. Good night.